You're watching news at Prime. Let's get to another important discussion now. Some civil society groups have slammed government for excluding them from the Water Indaba, which was held in Gauteng last week. Over 700 delegates from government, private sector and experts, they gathered to find solutions to problems in the country. Water and Sanitation Director General Dr. Phillips joins us tonight for more on the outcomes of that Water Indaba. Dr. Phillips, good evening to you and thank you very much for your time. You may call me pedantic for wanting to open the discussion in this way, but there's been a lot of words used to describe the water situation in the country. We have moved from a crisis to an emergency, which was uttered by the president at that Water Indaba. Which is worse, Dr. Phillips, for you? A crisis or an emergency that the president says we're facing now?
Good evening, Coley, and good evening to all your viewers. Well, Coley, if people in a community anywhere in the country, be it in a rural area or in Johannesburg, haven't gotten water for a week, then it's both a crisis and an emergency. So I think the situation is very serious, and we're very pleased that the president spoke about it in that way, because there are a number of things that need to be done to turn the situation around. Well,
it then behoves us, Dr. Phillips, that we talk about the proposed solutions from that Water Indaba. What is of primary importance for you, or should we say, what were the salient points for you?
Coley, as you will recall from previous interviews, we have resuscitated the blue, green and no drop reports, which are reports that we do as the National Department on the performance of municipal water and sanitation distribution systems. We produced such reports in 2023 after a 10-year period of not doing them, and they showed that there had been quite a sharp decline in the performance of municipal water and sanitation systems over that 10-year period. So in January 2024, we called a summit with all the water services authorities, which are the municipalities which have the water and sanitation function. And we went through the results of the blue, green and no drop assessments. The assessments are extremely thorough, and they not only indicate what are the performance problems, they also indicate exactly what needs to be done by the municipalities to address them. So we went through that in detail with the municipalities, and in January 2014, we agreed on actions that the municipalities should take, including developing corrective action plans to address the problems. So now it's a year later, and we called the municipalities to another meeting to assess their progress against those actions, and also to inform them of progress that we've made at national level with some of the actions that we had to do.
Yeah.
So on both sides, there's been progress. About 80% of the municipalities have produced corrective action plans on their various stages of implementation. And there's also been quite a lot of progress at national level in terms of putting in place changes to the way the water services are managed at municipal level, which is primarily about addressing the problem of insufficient budgeting for the maintenance of water and sanitation infrastructure. And reforms are underway to do two things. Firstly, to ensure that revenue from the sale of water is ring-fenced for the water function. And secondly, to make sure that councils budget sufficiently for the maintenance of water infrastructure.
Those changes, Director General, it would seem to me that that is where the key is. Are municipalities receptive to these ideas, particularly ring-fencing the budget that has to do with the provision of water?
Yes, Coley, we were very pleased when we went through the draft declaration and resolutions from the Indaba. There were no objections to any of the resolutions, which included ring-fencing of revenue from the sale of water for the water function, and indeed ring-fencing all the management responsibilities as well, so that the head of water and sanitation in the municipality can be held accountable for the function. The head of the Water and Sanitation Department, once the management functions are ring-fenced as well, won't be able to say, well, I can't repair the leaks in the pipes quickly because I don't have control over the vehicles because it's managed somewhere else in the municipality. So when we discussed those resolutions at the end, there were no objections from anyone to those resolutions that were decided upon.
Very important. So if the head of the water and sanitation in a municipality agrees to be held accountable, what will that look like in practice if indeed they do not go according to what is directed of them?
It means a few things in practice, Paulie. Firstly, we need to remember that in terms of our constitution, we have three separate spheres of government, and one is not more equal than others. And they all have their own elections. As you know, we vote separately for elected representatives. So municipalities, municipal leaders are primarily accountable to the electorate which votes them, which votes for them or votes them into office. And they need to account to the electorate for the performance. But we also have a role in terms of the constitution as the national government to ensure that municipalities deliver services which meet minimum norms and standards. So in that sense, municipalities need to account to us. Another resolution that was taken was that we must proceed as the department with amendments to the Water Services Act, which we will be submitting to shortly to Cabinet to then be presented to Parliament. Those amendments will provide more clarity regarding current provisions in the Act which separate the roles of Water Services Authority and Water Service Provider at municipal level. The Act already says that municipalities are supposed to act as a local regulator. Their primary constitutional function is to ensure that water services are delivered, which is a Water Services Authority function.
Yeah.
But the Act already says that they can choose any service delivery mechanism to deliver the services, including an internal department or a water board or a private company through a concession or a municipal entity, a wide variety of different options for actually delivering the service, which is called the Water Service Provider function. With these amendments to the Act, we are going to introduce an operating license requirement for all water service providers. In other words, we're going to require that all water service providers get a license from us, which will be an indication that they have a minimum level of capability. And these amendments will enable our minister, if a municipality has a water service provider which does not meet those minimum capability requirements and doesn't get a license and shows no progress towards improving to get such a license, it will empower our minister to then legally require the municipality to go through a local consultation process to choose another licensed water service provider.
Yeah.
So we want to try and hold municipalities accountable for the need for them to deliver services according to national norms and standards. And we think this is the best mechanism for us to do that.
Crucially important as well, Dr. Phillips, who between the bulk water supplier and the municipality is responsible for infrastructure upkeep? Well,
the Constitution says that municipalities are responsible for delivering water and sanitation services. As a support mechanism, the Water Services Act, right back in the late 1990s, anticipated that it would be inefficient for each municipality to develop its own water treatment works, especially in large urban areas like Gauteng, where there are big economies of scale that can be achieved through having a centralized bulk water service provider like Rand Water. So Rand Water was put in place, and other water boards, as a support mechanism to municipalities, so that they can bulk water infrastructure can more efficiently be supplied and can be shared by a number of municipalities. So the water boards are responsible for for maintaining their bulk water infrastructure, and generally speaking across the country, the water board's infrastructure is in a good condition. Some of it better than others. For example, Rand Water and Umgeni Utigela's infrastructure is in an excellent condition. The municipalities themselves are responsible for maintaining the distribution infrastructure, which is the next stage after the bulk infrastructure. So Rand Water supplies, for example, the municipalities in Gauteng with treated water, and municipalities in Gauteng store that in reservoirs and then reticulate it to all the households, and sometimes pump it as well to all the households. The municipalities are responsible for maintaining and operating that distribution infrastructure, and they're supposed to do that with revenue from the sale of water.
Very well explained. Final question to you, DG. You heard right at the beginning of this discussion me saying that the civil society groups, at least some of them, have slammed government for excluding them from this Water Indaba. Were there any groups, to your mind, that were excluded? And if so, what is your message to them for why they didn't participate?
Chloe, this wasn't a general national gathering about water issues. As I indicated in the beginning of the interview, this was primarily about us as the national government, particularly the Department of Water and Sanitation, engaging with the water services authorities, the municipalities, to follow up with them about whether they've implemented the corrective action plans from the summit a year ago, which were agreed to after the Blue, Green and No Drop reports. We do engage with civil society all the time. If you read the resolutions that we took at the end of the Indaba, we indicated that we would engage with civil society organizations about the results of the Indaba after the Indaba. I think it's important sometimes for government to meet and for us to get ourselves in order, for the National Department together with the premiers and the relevant MECs to meet with the municipalities and for us to have a government-to-government discussion about what needs to be done and what is progress. So we are aware that many civil society organizations weren't invited. We didn't invite organized business either. So BUSA and the other organized business organizations weren't invited. There were private sector companies there, such as companies which sell water infrastructure and sanitation systems, so that they could display those, so that particularly, for example, there were very interesting displays about water efficient sanitation technologies, which was very useful to expose to the municipal officials who were there.
Yeah.
So I think that's the reasoning, Paulie. It was about government getting its act together in a largely government meeting.
Dr. Sean Phillips, thank you very much for your time, Water and Sanitation Director General.